The lamplight flickered across bloodied tweezers. In the small cabin deep in the Montana wilderness, Ruth Palmer's steady hands worked over a man's skull, extracting something that had lived there for 18 years, something that had stolen his hearing, his voice, his hope. The rancher lay on his side on the kitchen table, his breath shallow, his eyes squeezed shut. He had not spoken a word since she started. He had not spoken a word in 6 years. The object came free all at once. Ruth held it up to the light. A piece of shattered glass no bigger than a child's fingernail, crusted with old blood and tissue. She dropped it into a tin cup. It made a sound like a bell ringing. The rancher heard it. His eyes flew open. Stories like this one start as jokes and end as something nobody finds funny. They start with men making wagers in saloons, and women with nowhere left to run, and they become the kind of love that outlasts the people who tried to destroy it. If this story finds you where you need it, subscribe so the next one finds you too. Drop the name of your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Because what Ruth Palmer did that night in a Montana cabin wasn't just medicine. It was mercy given to a man the world had written off as broken beyond repair. Ruth Palmer had been a nurse in Chicago before the fire took everything. The charity ward at Cook County Hospital had taught her to stitch wounds by lamplight, set broken bones without anesthetic, and tell the difference between sleeping and death. When the fire came in September of 1889, she walked out with a medical bag, 2 dresses, and a train ticket west she had kept for 3 years. She got off in Bitterroot Valley, Montana, on the 3rd of October. The town had 1 street and no doctor. "Died last spring," the station manager said. "You a nurse?" "I was." "Work out of Fletcher's store. He'll give you the back room for a cut of whatever folks pay." She took it. By November, she had treated broken bones, snake bites, difficult births, and a man kicked by a horse who lived because she kept him breathing through the night. The town called her Doc Palmer. She was competent, plain, and fat in a way that made men look past her and women trust her. She had learned that invisibility was safety. Then the men in the saloon made a wager. It started the way cruel things often do, as entertainment for people with too much whiskey and not enough conscience. There were 5 of them, ranchers and cowhands. They had been drinking since noon. One of them, a man named Dale Pritchard, had been complaining about his neighbor for the better part of an hour. "Cole Brennan's got 800 acres and no wife. Been that way 6 years. Just sits up there like a ghost. Don't talk, don't trade, don't come to town unless he's got to. Waste of good land if you ask me." "He's deaf," someone said. "He ain't deaf. He just don't want to hear nobody." "No, he's deaf. Got hurt in a mine collapse back in '83. Hasn't heard a sound since." "Well, deaf or not, it's unnatural. Man like that shouldn't be alone." Someone laughed. "You offering to keep him company?" "I'm saying someone should marry him off. Do him a favor." "Who'd marry a deaf man with no conversation?" Pritchard grinned. "Doc Palmer might." The table went quiet. Then someone laughed. Then everyone laughed. "You think she'd do it?" "I think she'd do anything to stay off the street." "Woman like that, no family, no money, no prospects? She's one bad winter from begging." "You gonna ask her?" "I'll do better than ask. I'll make it worth her while." Pritchard pulled a fold of bills from his pocket. $50. He slapped it on the table. $50 says I can get Doc Palmer to marry Cole Brennan by Christmas. Any takers? 3 men put money down. The bet was made. Ruth was cleaning instruments when Pritchard came into the back room at Fletcher's store. She did not look up. "If you're hurt, sit down. If you're drunk, leave." "I'm neither. I'm here with a business proposition." She set the scalpel down. "I'm not interested." "You haven't heard it yet." "I've heard enough men with propositions to know what comes next." "This one's different. It's legitimate. It's $50 for 1 day's work." That made her look up. Pritchard smiled. He was a man who smiled often and meant it never. "There's a rancher up in the North Valley, name's Cole Brennan. Good land, good house, no wife. He's been alone since he lost his hearing 6 years back. I'm thinking he could use a companion. You could use security. Seems like a match." "You're asking me to marry a stranger." "I'm offering you $50 and a roof that won't disappear when Fletcher decides he needs that back room for storage. You think that's a bad deal?" "I think you're making sport of someone." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm solving 2 problems at once. Brennan needs help, whether he knows it or not. You need stability. Marry him. Stay 6 months. If it don't work out, you leave with the $50 and whatever he gives you in the split. If it does work out, you've got a home." Ruth studied him. "Why?" "Why what? Why do you care whether Cole Brennan has a wife?" Pritchard shrugged. "I don't, but I care about $50, and I bet some boys you'd do it." There it was. the truth under the proposition. She was the punchline. The fat nurse desperate enough to marry a deaf man for money. She should have refused. She should have thrown him out. But $50 was 3 months of rent. $50 was medicine she could not currently afford to restock. $50 was the difference between surviving the winter and not. I want to meet him first. That can be arranged. And I want the money up front. Half now, half after the wedding. She held out her hand. Then you have a deal. Cole Brennan's ranch sat at the base of the mountains, 6 miles north of town. Ruth rode up on a borrowed horse 2 days later. Pritchard had given her directions. He had not come with her. That told her everything about how much he actually cared whether this arrangement succeeded. The ranch was well kept. The fences were mended. The barn was sound. There were cattle in the pasture, maybe 40 head. The house was small but solid. Stone foundation, wood siding, a chimney leaking thin smoke into the cold air. She tied the horse and knocked. Nothing. She knocked again, louder. The door opened. The man standing there was tall and lean and younger than she expected, maybe 35. His hair was dark and too long. His face was unshaven. His eyes were gray and careful. He looked at her without speaking. She pulled out the paper Pritchard had given her and held it up. On it she had written, "My name is Ruth Palmer. I am a nurse. Dale Pritchard sent me." Cole read it. His expression did not change. He stepped back and let her in. The house was clean. Sparse, but clean. There was a table, 2 chairs, a stove, a bed in the corner. Everything was in its place. It was the home of a man who had learned to live in silence and found order in it. She wrote on the paper again. "Pritchard says you need a wife. I need security. He is paying me to marry you. I wanted you to know that before we go any further." Cole read it. Then he looked at her for a long time. His eyes moved over her face, her body, her hands. Not with judgment, with assessment. Like he was deciding whether she was real or another trick the world was playing on him. He took the paper and wrote below her words. "Why would you agree to this?" She wrote back, "Because I have nowhere else to go." He read it. Then he nodded once. He understood that. He wrote again. "Do you know what you are agreeing to?" She wrote, "A marriage of convenience. I will cook and keep house. You will provide shelter. If it does not work, we end it." He studied the paper, then he wrote one more line. "I have not spoken in 6 years. I do not intend to start." She wrote, "I do not need you to speak." He looked at her. Something in his face shifted. Not softness, not hope, just recognition. She was offering him the same thing he was offering her, survival without the pretense of affection. He held out his hand. She shook it. They were married in town 3 days later. The preacher performed the ceremony in his front room. Pritchard stood as witness. He looked smug. Ruth looked calm. Cole looked like a man attending his own funeral. The vows were spoken aloud by the preacher. Ruth repeated hers. Cole nodded when his turn came. The preacher looked uncomfortable but did not object. He pronounced them married. Pritchard handed Ruth the second half of the $50. Cole led her out to the wagon. They rode back to the ranch in silence. That night, Ruth made supper, beans and cornbread. She set the table. Cole ate without looking at her. When he finished, he stood and walked outside. She cleaned the dishes. When she turned around, he had brought in her trunk and set it beside the bed. He pointed to the bed, then to himself, then to the floor. She understood. He was offering her the bed. He would sleep on the floor. She shook her head and pointed to the floor, then to herself. He frowned. She wrote on the paper, "I am a guest in your home. I will not take your bed." He wrote back, "You are my wife. You will not sleep on the floor." She crossed out wife and wrote employee. He stared at the word. Then he took the pencil and wrote in large letters, "No." She raised an eyebrow. He wrote again, "You are not an employee. You are my wife. That means something even if neither of us wanted it." She had not expected that. She had not expected him to see the arrangement as anything more than a transaction. But he was right. The paper in town had made it legal, and legal meant something, even here. She wrote, "Then we share the bed. You take one side, I take the other. We are adults." He read it, then he nodded. That night they lay on opposite sides of the bed, with a foot of cold space between them. Neither of them slept well, but neither of them froze. Ruth learned his routines quickly. He woke before dawn and worked until dark. He moved through the ranch like a man who had memorized every fence post and gate. He did not need sound. He had learned to read the land through sight and touch. He was not helpless. He was competent in a way that made her realize how many people had underestimated him. She kept the house. She cooked. She mended clothes. When she needed to communicate, she wrote. He wrote back. On the 8th day, she noticed him wince. She wrote, "Are you in pain?" He nodded. "Where?" He pointed to his right ear. She gestured for him to sit. She tilted his head toward the light and looked into his ear. It was infected. The skin was red and swollen. Dried blood crusted the opening. She wrote, "When did this start?" He wrote back, "It never stopped." "How long?" 18 years. She stared at him. 18 years of pain. 18 years of infection living inside his skull. No wonder he had stopped speaking. No wonder he had learned to live in silence. The pain alone would have been enough to break most men. She wrote, "I need to examine it properly. It will hurt." He wrote, "It already hurts." She went to her medical bag. The examination took an hour. She cleaned the outer ear first. Cole sat rigid in the chair, his hands gripping the armrests, his jaw clenched. She worked as gently as she could, but there was no gentle way to probe an infected wound that had been left untended for nearly 2 decades. When she looked deeper with a lamp and a small mirror, she saw it. A piece of foreign material lodged deep in the ear canal. Glass, she thought. Or metal. Something that had been driven in by force and never removed. She wrote, "There is something in your ear. It has been there a long time. It is causing the infection and likely the deafness. I can try to remove it, but it will be dangerous. If I slip, I could damage what hearing you have left. If I do nothing, the infection will eventually kill you." He read it. Then he wrote, "Do it. Are you sure?" He looked at her. His eyes were steady. He wrote, "I have been dead for 6 years. If you kill me, it will not be much different. If you save me, I will owe you everything." She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him the risk was too great. But she had seen infections like this in Chicago. She knew what came next if it was left alone. Fever, delirium, death. She wrote, "Lie down on the table. Do not move no matter what you feel." He lay down. The extraction took 2 hours. Ruth worked by lamplight with a pair of tweezers, a thin probe, and a steadiness she had learned in the charity ward where hesitation cost lives. Cole lay on his side with his head turned toward her. He did not make a sound. He did not flinch. He breathed slow and steady like a man enduring something he had always known was coming. The object was embedded deep. Every time she got the tweezers around it, it slipped. Blood ran down his neck. She wiped it away and tried again. Finally, on the 10th attempt, she felt the tweezers catch. She pulled slow and steady. The object resisted. Then it came free all at once. She held it up to the light. A shard of glass, thick and jagged, covered in old blood and tissue. She dropped it into the tin cup on the table. It made a high, clear sound. Cole's eyes flew open. He sat up so fast he nearly knocked her over. His hand went to his ear. His mouth opened. No sound came out. But his face was the face of a man hearing something for the first time in 6 years. She wrote, "Can you hear that?" He stared at the words. Then he looked at the cup. She picked it up and shook it. The glass rattled. He nodded. Tears ran down his face. She wrote, "It will take time for the infection to heal. Your hearing may not come back fully, but you will hear more than you did." He took the pencil. His hand shook. He wrote, "Thank you." She cleaned the wound and bandaged it. He sat at the table and stared at the piece of glass in the cup. She made tea. When she set the cup down in front of him, he heard the sound it made against the wood. He looked up at her like she had performed a miracle. She had not. She had simply done what any competent nurse would have done. But to him, it was everything. His hearing came back slowly. Not all of it, not even most of it, but enough. He heard the wind against the cabin walls. He heard the fire cracking in the stove. He heard the chickens in the yard and the cattle lowing in the pasture. He heard Ruth moving through the house, her footsteps heavy on the wooden floor. And one morning, 3 weeks after the extraction, He heard his own voice. "Ruth." She turned from the stove. He was standing in the doorway. His face was uncertain. His voice was rough from disuse. "Can you hear me?" She nodded. "I have not spoken in 6 years. I do not know if I remember how." "You are doing fine." He crossed the room and stood in front of her. "You saved my life." "I removed a piece of glass." "You gave me back the world." She did not know what to say to that. She turned back to the stove. "Ruth." She stopped. "I know why you married me. I know it was money. I know Pritchard made a wager. I am not angry." She turned slowly. "How do you know about the wager?" "I can read lips. I saw them in the saloon the day before you came. I knew what they were doing." "And you married me anyway?" "I married you because you were honest. You told me the truth before we signed the paper. That is more than most people would have done." She leaned against the counter. "So what now?" "Now I ask you something I should have asked before. Do you want to stay?" "You are paying me to stay." "No, Pritchard paid you to marry me. That debt is settled. I am asking if you want to stay as my wife. Not my employee, not my nurse. My wife." "Why would you want that?" "Because you are the first person in 6 years who has treated me like a man instead of a broken thing. Because you are competent and strong, and you do not apologize for taking up space. Because I would rather spend the rest of my life with you than spend another day alone." She stared at him. "Cole, I am not asking you to love me. I am asking you to stay. Love can come later if it comes at all. But I need you to know that I see you. Not as a joke, not as something Pritchard wagered on. As Ruth Palmer, the woman who saved my life." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I will stay." "You are sure?" "I walked into this marriage for $50. I am staying because I want to." He smiled. It was the first time she had seen him smile. It changed his entire face. Spring came. The infection healed. Cole's hearing improved enough that he could hold conversations without writing, though he still struggled with soft sounds and distance. He started going into town again. He spoke to people. Some of them were surprised. Some of them were uncomfortable. He did not care. Ruth set up a small practice in one of the outbuildings. Word spread that Doc Palmer was living at the Brennan Ranch and treating patients again. People came. She charged what they could afford. She saved 3 lives that spring and lost none. Dale Pritchard came to the ranch in April. He rode up alone. Cole was in the barn. Ruth was in the garden. She saw him coming and stood. "Afternoon, Doc." She did not respond. "Came to see how the happy couple is doing." "We are fine." "Glad to hear it. Bet's over, you know. You made it past Christmas. I lost $50. "Good. You don't sound pleased." "I am not interested in your wagers, Mr. Pritchard." "No, I suppose not. You got what you wanted, roof over your head, man who can't argue with you because he can't hear you half the time." Cole stepped out of the barn. He crossed the yard slowly. Pritchard saw him and grinned. "Brennan, heard you're talking again. That true?" "It is." "Well, congratulations. Guess Doc Palmer here earned her keep." "She did more than that." "Oh? What's she done?" Cole looked at Ruth, then back at Pritchard. "She married a man the town had written off as useless. She removed a piece of glass that had been killing me for 18 years. She gave me my hearing back. She stayed when she could have left. And she did it without asking for anything except honesty. That is more than you have ever done for anyone." Pritchard's grin faltered. "I gave her $50. You made a wager. She earned a life. There is a difference. You're angry because I made sport of you. I am angry because you made sport of her. I knew what I was when you made that bet. Ruth did not deserve to be part of your joke." Pritchard looked at Ruth. "You telling him to say this?" "I have told him nothing. Cole speaks for himself." "Since when?" "Since I decided his voice mattered more than your opinion," Cole said. Pritchard's face went red. "You think you're better than me now? You think because some fat nurse fixed your ear you're something special?" Cole stepped forward. He was taller than Pritchard, broader, and he was done being dismissed. "I think Ruth Palmer is worth 10 of you. I think you came here hoping to find us miserable so you could feel justified in what you did. And I think you are leaving now before I make you." Pritchard opened his mouth, then closed it. He climbed back on his horse. "Enjoy your charity case, Brennan." He rode off. Ruth watched him go. Then she turned to Cole. "You did not have to do that." "Yes, I did." "Why?" "Because you have spent your whole life being invisible. Someone needed to make you seen." She looked at him. His face was steady. His voice was clear. He was not the same man she had married 4 months ago. Neither was she. "Thank you." "Do not thank me. Just stay." "I already said I would." "Then say it again. I like hearing it." She smiled. "I will stay." They were remarried in June, not because the first marriage was not legal, but because the first marriage had been a transaction, and this one was a choice. The ceremony was held at the ranch. The preacher came. So did half the town. Ruth wore a new dress she had sewn herself. Cole wore a clean suit. They spoke their vows aloud this time, both of them. When the preacher pronounced them married, Cole kissed her in front of everyone. Pritchard was not invited. That night, after the guests left, Ruth and Cole sat on the porch and watched the stars. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Regret what?" "Marrying me the first time, when it was just money and a wager." "No." "Why not?" "Because it brought you here, and you gave me something I did not know I needed." "What was that?" "A reason to stop being silent." She leaned against him. He put his arm around her. She was not small. She did not try to be. She took up space the way a mountain takes up space, unapologetically, permanently. "Cole?" "Yes?" "I can hear your heartbeat." He smiled. "I can hear yours, too." 5 years later, a young nurse arrived in Bitterroot Valley looking for work. She had heard there was a Doc Palmer who ran a practice out of the Brennan Ranch. She had heard Doc Palmer was the best nurse in Montana. She had heard Doc Palmer would train anyone willing to learn. Ruth met her at the door. The girl was thin and nervous and carrying a bag that looked like it held everything she owned. "I am looking for Doc Palmer." "You found her." "I heard you might be hiring." Ruth looked at her. She saw herself 6 years ago, desperate, competent, invisible. "Can you stitch a wound?" "Yes." "Can you set a bone?" "I have done it twice." "Can you work through the night if someone needs you?" "I can." Ruth opened the door wider. "Then you are hired." The girl stepped inside. She saw Cole sitting at the table reading. She saw the children, 2 of them, a boy and a girl, playing on the floor. She saw the warmth and the order and the life that filled the house. "This is a good place," she said quietly. Ruth smiled. "It was not always, but it is now." The piece of glass sat in a small box on the mantel. Ruth kept it there as a reminder, not of pain, but of the moment everything changed. The moment a deaf man heard a bell ring and a fat nurse stopped being invisible. The moment 2 people who had been written off as broken realized they were simply waiting for someone who could see them whole. Cole walked past it every day. Sometimes he stopped and looked at it. Sometimes he picked it up and held it to the light. It was a small thing, a shard of nothing, but it had stolen 18 years of his life, and Ruth had given them back. That was not medicine. That was love. And in a place where survival was hard and softness was often mistaken for weakness, it was the kind of love that lasted. Some men are loved because they are easy to understand. Cole Brennan was loved because Ruth Palmer saw past the silence and pulled out the thing that was killing him. And in return, he gave her the one thing she had never had before, a place where her size, her skill, and her stubborn refusal to disappear made her not just necessary, but irreplaceable.